right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, we'd like to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahawah, BAHASHAM, YAHAWADAH, BAHASHAM, RAWCHAA. Double honor to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone that taught us his truth, and salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. And the elect begins with the 144,000. Yahawah, who the world ignorantly calls God and Jehovah. BAHASHAM is in the name. YAHAWASHI, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. The RAWCHAA doctrine is the Holy Spirit. We're the brothers of the Great Millstone Chicago camp. I'm the brother Ivan you join with.
Shalom, the brother AHPARYAM.
Come back at you, brothers and sisters of the household of faith of the Hopeful Right Select with another lesson. And Lord willing, we hope this lesson be edifying through the spirit and power of YAHAWASHI. Once again, we hope this lesson is edifying. You know, we're just going to simply entitle this this lesson, YAHAWASHI, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. It was present, all over the Old Testament, man. YAHAWASHI was prophesied, to ultimately to come, to give his life for the, for the sins of the children of Israel. Ultimately, YAHAWASHI ultimately being present within the Old Testament. Before he actually came in the flesh, YAHAWASHI was prophesied, man. About coming, to give his life, things of that nature, man. Ibaya, if you can start out with Isaiah 53.
Okay. This is Isaiah 53. And it reads at the top, "Who had believed our report, and to whom is the arm of Yahweh revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of the dry ground. Yep. He hath no form nor comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not."
And exactly right, man. This is prophesied of YAHAWASHI before he actually came on the scene. And before the lesson had started, you can put it back in a Google search if you want to. I essentially Google what was the time frame between the timeline of Isaiah to the coming of YAHAWASHI. And it read roughly around 700 to 750 years. And this was written 700 to 750 years before YAHAWASHI came in the flesh, came on the scene, man. It was ultimately prophesied that the Lord will live, this type of lifestyle. He would be hated by his own people. He would be ultimately offered on the cross, sacrificed.
That's right, bro, because that sacrifice and that redemption is the whole focal point of our story.
That's right.
That's why when it says in Revelation that he was the lamb slain from the foundation of the earth. So from before the earth was even made, it was always going to be YAHAWASHI, the Redeemer. You see? So of course the Old Testament talks about it. The brother just gave you Isaiah 53, man. This is the prophet, the suffering servant. This is the prophecy of YAHAWASHI.
And right, I believe, just to back up that point real quick, I believe in the New Testament, I believe it was Philip, they ultimately taught the
right.
about YAHAWASHI's return. They was actually reading from Isaiah the 53rd chapter, of ultimately what YAHAWASHI coming on the scene, YAHAWASHI being put up on a cross,
See. Yo, hey, Salaki, bro, may I continue with this?
Yeah,
and then I got that Matthew to back you up.
Yes, sir.
It says verse 4, "Surely he had borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed."
Yeah, because ultimately with the sacrifice of YAHAWASHI, he ultimately brought us back, to the Father, man. And ultimately with the sacrifice of YAHAWASHI, man, we're ultimately made whole, man. That's why YAHAWASHI is so important, man. Because YAHAWASHI, Salaki, Yahawah is not dealing with any of us. And it's only through YAHAWASHI that we ultimately get to the Father Yahawah.
That's right. This I got two right here. The topic of the lesson. YAHAWASHI is prophesied in the Old Testament. So it says Matthew 3:3. the preaching of John the Baptist. Matthew 3:1, in those days came John the Baptist preaching in the wilderness of Judea and saying, repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. For this is he that was spoken of by the prophet Isaiah, saying, voice of one that crying in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make straight his paths.
Yep,
Okay.
and that's what ultimately John the Baptist did. He prepared the way of Yahawashi, man. You know, he was the forerunner of Yahawashi's ministry. He was the one that introduced Yahawashi. You can read about that. Was that John, the first chapter? You know, what ultimately when Yahawashi was introduced?
Khan, I got that on deck too.
Khan, yes, sir, you got it.
Yeah, but if you go to the cross reference, you see this is Isaiah 40:3, the voice of him that crieth in the wilderness. That's what John is telling you right there. You know that was Isaiah was prophesying about Yahawashi.
That's right.
John 1:45. All right, Yahawashi's public ministry, first converts. John 1:45. Philip findeth Nathanael and saith unto him, we have found him of whom Moses in the law and the prophets did write, Yahawashi of Nazareth, the son of Joseph.
Yeah, Khan. And ultimately that Isaiah we read, you know, Yahawashi, even going back, you know, even before Isaiah, man. You know, but during the time of Isaiah, you know, prophesied Yahawashi was going to come on the scene 700 to 750 years before Yahawashi actually came in the flesh, man. You know, you can grab me another one, brother. I believe it's one in get Psalms. These two are together real nice. Get Psalms 2 and 12 real quick.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Kiss the Son, yo. Psalms 2 and 12. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him.
And right, who is the son of Yahweh? Yahawashi, man. He said, kiss the Son, lest he be angry. So we're ultimately to obey Yahawashi, because ultimately what? Yahweh gave everything to Yahawashi. I believe it talks about that in Colossians. You know, how everything was ultimately given to Yahawashi, man. So it says what? Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, man. And this is all the way back in the Psalms, man. You know, all the way back, even before Isaiah came on the scene, man. You know, kiss the Son, lest he be angry. You can grab, what's that? Exodus 23. The Lord ultimately had the angel chart. Let me see.
I got it.
Khan. You know, just to back up that Psalms.
Yeah, man. Exodus 23. Hang on, I just want to put this before I forget. Proverbs 30.
Yes, sir.
But it says Exodus 23 and 20. Conquest of the land. Behold, I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way, and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him, and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him.
Yep, for my name is in him. Hey, Yahawashi, man. You know? But you got it out.
Yeah, no, that's it. Meaning, I and the Father are one, so his reputation is in him. And Yahawashi, the Son, is the fulfillment of prophecy. Okay, so it says right here, Psalms 40 and 7. Then said I, lo, I come, in the volume of the book it is written of me. See, in the volume of the book it's written of him. I delight to do thy will, O my God. Yea, thy law is within my heart.
Yeah, Khan. You know, ultimately talking about Yahawashi, because you know, during the time of the Exodus, you know, when ultimately what the children of Israel, was, delivered from the, the land of Egypt, ultimately through Moses, ultimately what, Yahweh ultimately had the angel ultimately to guide them, man. You know, out of ancient Egypt, man. And it says what? In that chapter the brother just read, it says, provoke him not, man. And in that Psalms 2 and 12, which we just read, says, kiss the Son, lest he be angry. You know? But ultimately, just really proving that Yahawashi was present in the Old Testament, man. You know? And then ultimately it was prophesied that Yahawashi, was going to come in the flesh. That's what we read about in the New Testament when Yahawashi ultimately came on the scene. You know, when
the Son is born.
Yep. And that's the spirit. I was just gonna tell you to grab that next. And you had that Proverbs I bought you was gonna get?
Yes, sir. Proverbs 30.
Khan, you got it, big up.
Proverbs 30:4, who hath ascended up into heaven, or descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fists? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is his son's name, if thou canst tell?
Yeah, in the Old Testament, man. What is the father's name? What is the son's name? Is thou canst tell, man. You know, hey, which shows you that the names are very important. You know, which ultimately proves that Yahawashi was also in the Old Testament, man. You know, we know the father name being Yahweh. We know the son's name being Yahawashi, man. You know.
That's it.
You can grab the one in Genesis 49, Big Up.
Yes, sir.
And this is all the way back. You know, the first book, man. You know, what's that? The first 5 books of Moses.
Yeah. Genesis 49:8.
Yep.
Judah, because hey, what is this? This is the prophecy of the tribes, man. See, Israel's prophecy concerning his sons. Okay. And we understand, we know that Yahawashi came up out of the tribe of Judah.
Yep. And it talks about that in Hebrews 7. It's evident that our Lord sprang from the tribe of Judah.
Being the son of David.
Yep.
Okay. So it says, verse 8, from Genesis 49:8, Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise, because the head tribe. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thy enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up?
And we know who is going to ultimately rise up the tribe of Judah is, you know, the Most High Yahweh. You know, Yahweh BAHASHAM Yahawashi is going to ultimately, it's because it ultimately starts with Judah. And ultimately, when Judah rises up, hey, the rest of the tribes is going to rise up with Judah, man.
That's right. The 10th of Judah first.
Yep.
And then here's the point, talking about Yahawashi right here. Verse 10, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall be the gathering of the people.
Right.
Real
and
quick
to Shiloh.
Yeah.
Now you got it. I'm going to say that one point after you get that, by Salakia.
No, just to show what Shiloh means. Shayala, which is rest, tranquility. That's the Prince of Peace. See?
Yep. Because it talks about even, what's that? The Lord shall come with healing in his wings, man.
Yep. There you go.
You know? And ultimately says what? To the you can read that last part again, how it says, you know, the gathering of the people shall be, you know, talking about what? The Israelites, starting with the elect.
Yep. Genesis 49:10, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall be the gathering of the people be.
And right, and how is that ultimately going to happen? When Yahawashi makes his second return, you can get that in Isaiah 11 and verse 11. It says, you can start where it says, you know, a root shall stem out of Jesse, you know, loosely paraphrasing. Because also when Yahawashi makes his second return, he's going to do just that, man. He's going to gather the elect of the children of Israel.
Yep, Isaiah 11:10, and in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be.
Right, it says, to he shall the Gentiles speak, his rest shall be glorious. And who are those Gentiles, man? Those are the Israelite foreigners, man. You know, the ones that's being connected right back to the fold. You know, just a side note real quick. Another precept you can actually get, you don't have to grab it, you know, I'm gonna just say it. It's what's that, Isaiah 14? What's that? I believe it's verse 1. It says, the stranger shall be joined with thee, talking about the Israelite foreigners.
Yep.
You know, so ultimately what the Yahawashi is coming back to gather the elect of the children of Israel, man. That's who those Gentiles is referring to, man.
Exactly.
You know, those that was in that Gentile state of mind ultimately being reconnected back to the fold. That's who Yahawashi is going to deliver, man. You know, which is another precept to prove that Yahawashi was in the Old Testament, man. That Genesis 49 connected to that Isaiah the 11th chapter.
That's perfect, bro. And then it goes, and back in Genesis 49:11, it goes on, binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. As it says, he will in Isaiah, when he comes back, he will stain all his raiment.
Yep.
His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk.
Right, because I believe it's in Revelations. What's that? The first chapter it says his eyes was as a
flaming fire.
Yeah, flaming fire. Yep. Just to land back. That Genesis 49, which we're currently reading. So everything is connected, man. YAHAWASHI has been prophesied. Has been here since the very beginning, man. Even going back to the beginning of creation, man. We know that YAHAWASHI is the word. Because it says in John 1:1, in the beginning was the word. And ultimately YAHAWASHI was the first spirit created by Yahweh.
Exactly.
So ultimately Yahweh was YAHAWASHI was Yahweh's first creation. And
Right.
ultimately through YAHAWASHI created the elect, and YAHAWASHI and the elect created everything else.
That's right. And that's why YAHAWASHI has the title the only begotten Son.
Yep.
Because he was the only spirit directly created by the Father. And then after that, what does it say? Through him all things were made.
Yep. I just got chills with that one, bro. That's raw, bro. But let me see what else I got on the because I had a couple of precepts on deck. Okay, we went through the Psalms too. Oh yeah, the Isaiah 9. I think around verses 5 or 6.
Oh yeah, verse 6, Isaiah 9:6. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder.
Yep.
That's the throne of David.
That's right.
That's Israel ruling on the earth forever. That's the kingdom that will not be taken down, pursuant to Daniel.
That's right.
To the Most High.
Shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom even forever and ever, man. So ultimately, before YAHAWASHI even came on the scene in the flesh, it was prophesied that YAHAWASHI was going to have a kingdom. That the government was going to be upon his shoulders, man.
Oh yeah, back to that Psalms 2. Ask of me, I will give you the heathen for thine inheritance, and the whole earth for thy possession.
That's right. Hey, so ultimately, everything belongs to YAHAWASHI. He has a kingdom coming, man. So ultimately, he was promised the kingdoms, his kingdom since the very beginning, man. So ultimately, yeah, man. Hey, it's a lot of precepts to prove that YAHAWASHI, was in the Old Testament. He ain't being present as an angel. He ain't being, ultimately prophesied about to come in the future. So YAHAWASHI is present all over the Old Testament. Because you have a lot of individuals that ultimately say that the son of Yahweh, who is YAHAWASHI, is not present in the Old Testament. That's a complete lie, man. That's what the Christian church tell you. That's what these Christians that don't know anything tells you, man. Hey, but YAHAWASHI is present with throughout the whole book, man. Because the Lord said He comes in the volume of the book. Exactly. And he even talked about YAHAWASHI even talked about himself in the New Testament, man. Relating back to the Old Testament.
Exactly. When he gave the breakdown in the Psalm where David said, Yahweh said unto my Lord,
yep,
sit on my right hand. So David in the Old Testament times knew that the Son was his Lord.
Yep. That's right.
Also when he was YAHAWASHI, that was not the first time that he was on the scene, or that was not the first time that he was in the flesh on the earth.
Yep, because you had YAHAWASHI was Adam. YAHAWASHI was what? Melchizedek. YAHAWASHI was Isaac. YAHAWASHI was King Solomon. So ultimately YAHAWASHI had many incarnations on the planet Earth before he actually came as the Messiah, YAHAWASHI.
Exactly. It says right here, Matthew 1:1, the book of the generation of YAHAWASHI Mashiach, the son of David, the son of Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the son of David? Solomon, the brother just mentioned, and son of Abraham, Isaac. You can receive it.
And there you go, man. And YAHAWASHI was present all over the Old Testament, man. Even to the point that he was ultimately prophesied. YAHAWASHI was prophesied to come in the future in the Old Testament, as YAHAWASHI, how he was ultimately going to be, put on the cross, sacrificed for the children of Israel's sins, as we read in Isaiah, the 53rd chapter. And so YAHAWASHI is present within the whole, the whole Old Testament, man. The Lord comes in the volume of the book, as we quoted, man, as the brother read earlier. But that's pretty much all I had, brother. Anything you had?
Nah, that's it.
I'm gonna close this out. So with that being said, we hope this lesson was edifying. We want to end it out by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM,
BAHASHAM.
Double honor to the elders and the apostles of great millstone taught us his truth, and salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. Lord, when we hope this lesson was edifying. Till next time, Kwam YASHARAHLA, Shalom, and Abba.
Shalom, Abba. Shalom.
Shalom.